Thank you, Victoria, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking just a little bit of time out of your day to sit with us and hear about this overview of board member responsibilities. I want to just reemphasize something Victoria said. This is really quick. This half hour will touch the bare essentials and basics of board member responsibilities. So it's not meant to be a end-all be-all training on the topic or for your board, but it'll get your wheels turning. It'll give a chance for you to really kind of look at yourselves and say, are we even doing the bare essentials when it comes to operating correctly as a board or yourself as a board member? We have both board members and directors or leaders of the organization in attendance today. So hopefully this will be very beneficial for everyone to have a good understanding of how those relationships are supposed to work. So today's training objectives, we're gonna really tackle the legal issues and legal duties of board members, which is actually vital, obviously, to keep you legal and keep you in line with all the different bodies you have to report to, and also understanding the various roles of board members, the different hats that they have to wear when serving as a board member. All right, so let's get right into it. Today's nonprofit board. First of all, if you are a board member, if you're currently serving on a board, first of all, we have to say thank you. In the nonprofit industry, if it wasn't for board members who give up their time, their talent, their resources, the organizations would just simply not exist. So they're a vitally important part of nonprofit work. So the first word I want to really highlight is my first sentence says single most important body of a nonprofit. And I want to stress a minute the word body, because the board of a nonprofit works as an entity. It acts as one to make legally and socially responsible decisions for the organization. The power of a single board member is nil. They don't have power. The time they have power to make decisions on behalf of the organization is when they come together collectively as a unit. And that's when the board has their responsibility. So yeah, you can tell people you're a board member, but again, when it comes to decision making and being ultimately responsible, it's a group, it's an entity, it's the oneness that's important when it comes to boards. You're charged with being good stewards of the resources available and that come to the organization. And again, the highest purpose of a board and is to make sure they're acting for the good of others, whether that's the community that your organization is serving, and it's also acting on behalf of the mission, whatever the mission of the organization is. And we'll get into what's important to your mission. Going forward, we're going to start off with those kind of sometimes people think is scary, the idea that the legal part, the legal board member duties. So here they are. The first one is duty of care. And what the duty of care really describes is the level of competence that is expected of a board member. So it's the duty of care is like the ordinary prudent person, reasonable person, the manner in which they would exercise in a similar position and under similar circumstances. All right, so you're exercising reasonable care when making a decision as an organization. It's really staying aware of the issues that surround the nonprofit that you're serving. It's being active in yours, not just showing up every other month to a board meeting if the meetings and then not know what's going on. You need to be engaged, you need to understand, you need to show up. Being present is very important for a board member. You just really need to show up, to be available. So, and then exercise really common sense. We're talking about the basic level of competency, just making sure that the decisions make sense for your organization. The next duty is a duty of loyalty. This describes a level of competence that is expected of board members when it comes to being faithful to the board and to its mission. So this is the one where we put the board member is putting the organizational interests before their own personal interests. This is where things that are said in the boardroom are held in confidence. Now, if your organization does not have a conflict of interest or a confidentiality policy currently in place, these are two documents that you really should adopt and have all of your board members sign, and they should be really willing to sign them. So going back to the old personal gain idea, I have a great example that happened in a board that I serve on. We're here in a small towns up in the UP, and we're going to have an event, and there is one place in town that really fits for this type of event, just one. In the area that we serve, the board serves, there's one place. Well, the operator manager of that facility is a board member. And so she was very concerned and saying, wait, can we even hold this at my event? Because obviously if we hold the event there, I'm going to benefit, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And the big thing I encouraged her was, well, hold on. When we vote on if that's the place we're going to hold this event, all you do is abstain. She removed herself from the decision making, and we as a group just said, of course we're going to hold it there. That's the one place that keeps the event in our neighborhood, so to speak. And so there, she does kind of benefit, but she did not have any decision making power or even pushed or lobbied to have it at her venue. So again, the conflict of interest was not violated because she removed herself decision, and it just made sense for our organization. So and the confidence issue too is, some people like to point out, well, wait a second, there are some boards where they're required to have transparency, they have to hold open meetings, and that's true for some nonprofits, but sometimes there are matters that are so confidential that you need to go into a closed session. They can announce going into a closed session. But for the vast majority of nonprofits, they don't have those kind of same requirements or rigors. And so what that's really emphasizing is that when things, the duties and activities of the board are being wrestled with and talked about and decisions are being made, that stuff should stay within the board room and not just be common knowledge and spread out wherever. It's giving a chance for the board to operate and talk and discuss without worry that everyone will find out or hear about it. So things that need to be remain confidential should be remain confidential and stay within the boardroom. So just again, it's been practicing common sense, some wisdom on what can be shared and what should not be shared. Okay, the next duty is a duty of obedience. And this refers to being faithful to the organization's mission. And this is a very important one. So often we can find, whether it's finding funding or other opportunities that might come along, and the organization is tempted to pick up something or start something that doesn't really truly fit with their mission. And it's the board's job ultimately to say, hold on a second, why are we chasing this grant, or why are we going after this program when it really doesn't fit our true mission? And so the board's there to kind of act as an oversight to say, hold on, time out, let's make sure what we're doing really does fit the mission of the organization. So again, everything that they're doing and acting is in consistency with the goals of the organization, because the public really trusts that this organization, whether it's funds that were raised or that were donated to the organization, they give believing that the organization is going to use that resource to fulfill that specific mission. When you start going off mission, you can erode that public trust and confuse even people who are donating or supporting your organization. So it's important for the board members to really keep the organization on task with following their mission. Another way that they need to do this duty of obedience is keeping up with things like the IRS or state laws or even other federal laws. Someone on the board being abreast of that and just really informing everyone else the importance of changes that might be coming that will affect your organization, whether it becomes a reporting issue or maybe an accountability type thing, but someone needs to be aware and share with the board. The board needs to be aware of any changes that will affect them on a state or federal level. And of course, going back to the organization itself, not just fulfilling and being in accordance with their mission, but also their bylaws. There's a way of operating that hopefully hopefully, you all have a set of bylaws for your organization. And again, the board's responsible for making sure that they function and the organization functions in accordance with those bylaws. All right, switching now, kind of moving on from those legal board member duties, we're going to talk about the work of the board. And I just picked out, kind of highlighted 5 big top categories of the work of the board. So we'll just go into each of these in a little bit here. And as we do tackle each of these, the board operations, strategic planning, resource development, oversight, and ambassadorship, I really want to think about your organization and think about where you're currently at and what areas are kind of strengths, what you're doing well in, but also be really kind of aware and thinking of what do we need to be improved. Maybe there's some areas that need to be worked on as part of the work of the board. So, well, first we'll start off with board operations. And this one is important to that the fact that the board needs to continue to exist. You have to have a functioning board in a nonprofit. So the makeup of the board and the recruitment of new members is actually the responsibility of the board. In a lot of organizations, the staff, and especially the director or leader, ends up going on recruiting to find board members to make sure their boards they're filled up, the spots are filled. But really, it's actually the board's responsibility to make sure they keep going and they have enough members. So again, you will work with your director, your executive director, partnering, but it should not be rested upon their shoulders, the staff's shoulders. It really needs to be a function of the board to replace itself. Likewise, orientations and training new board members, again, should be a function of the board. The board should be taking responsibility of training their own and making sure they have an understanding of what their responsibilities are. As well as, we greatly encourage, if you don't already do this, to assess your board from time to time. See where you're at, see what the strengths and weaknesses are, see if you have a good cross-section of the communities or even people that you serve represented on your board. And of course, ultimately, the board is responsible for the structure, how they manage their meetings, the roles of officers, etc. So the structure of how the board works, the board has to make those decisions. The next one is strategic planning. This is the thinking and planning for the future, staying true to your mission. The strategic plan is what helps an organization stay true and stay on mission, whether it's a plan that's looking at the next couple years, 5 years, 10 years. One of the issues that comes up a lot in strategic planning and in a lot of nonprofits that we work with is that the board looks to the director for the direction where the organization is going, whether it's an executive director, president, whatever you call it, your organization calls that leader. But this is actually not the right way. The board should partner with your executive director for driving forward the organization, but not relying strictly on the director to tell the board what direction it's going. So the board really does need to be that driving force that says, hey, this is where we're headed because this is our mission. And then they keep that director accountable to fulfilling that mission and making sure they're moving in the direction that they planned out with the strategic planning. Because again, the board's looking at that higher level, looking at the future going, all right, we need to get to this place. So again, don't rely, directors, if your board's relying on you to do everything and all, you need to be able to remind and push back and say, I need you to help guide, because it's not about all on you. It's your board should be helping. Resource development. The board is ultimately responsible for ensuring the organization has the necessary resources to meet their mission. Again, this is another one of those things where it's a partnership. The board needs to partner with your director, executive director, for resource development, not strictly saying, yeah, we need to raise money. Director, that's what we hired you for, do it. Which is true, you do hire a director to help in the fundraising, in the developments, maybe even writing grants if your organization does that. But ultimately, when they set a budget, when a board sets an annual budget, it's their responsibility to make sure somehow, usually through the people they hire, to accomplish that part of the responsibility. So, but it's not just financial. We always focus on financial because equally important in resource development is the human aspect. And that's where I mentioned the board ultimately hires the leader, whatever that leader's title is, and then that leader will actually hire the other human resources. But again, it's important that they understand that they're responsible for that too. And then the physical is just your tools and place that you use to fulfill, whether it's your office space, your equipment, whatever. So again, boards, you're responsible for making sure those things are in place so the organization can do the work. Oversight, very important part of your, again, this is again the bird's eye view. The board is not looking at nitpicky little details of the day-to-day operations. They're looking at an oversight, the overall financial picture, making sure there is enough funding to fulfill the duties and tasks that's been laid out and the goals for the organization. The oversight over a program means more or less, is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is it actually accomplishing what it set out to do? Not necessarily looking at the little details of a program. And of course, the legal oversight. Just to kind of remember, it's a good time to do this when it talks about oversight, that kind of the organizational chart of a nonprofit should be the board is the ultimate authority when they're acting as an entity in a whole. Then it's the director that they hire, and the director then is above the staff and volunteers. So the board's responsible for hiring and evaluating their director. The executive director is responsible for staff and volunteers. A board can't micromanage and provide effective oversight at the same time. So they really have to empower whatever director they hired to actually go and fulfill the strategies that they come up with that to fulfill the mission. All right. Okay, last here on this work of the board is ambassadorship. This is advocating for the mission and just building general awareness for your organization. The networks that you board members bring to the table, your spheres of influence, the people you touch in your everyday life, is a huge opportunity for you to talk about and promote the work that your nonprofit that you serve on does. And so the nonprofit really relies on board members to really be out there and sharing the mission and the vision of the organization and telling about the good things it's doing. Obviously, I know some people with financial backgrounds are thinking, yeah, because it gives us more chance to raise money, which is true. It does open you up to possible new donors and such, but the bigger thing is you want people to understand that the work you have has value and that you're proud of it and that you are proud to be involved. This ambassadorship is also a great opportunity for former board members and or volunteers as well to stay active with the organization by continuing to advocate and kind of be an ambassador for the organization and telling people, yeah, I worked with them or I served on their board and they're doing great things and here's some of the stuff I got from there and I still support them. So use your sphere of influence, use your abilities to be an ambassador, talk up your organization to those you know. So a good board member attends and actively participates in meetings and special events. That means, again, I mentioned at the beginning, presence. You have to be present. If you're not there, if your board never shows up for things, that doesn't send a good message. You're supposed to be the biggest ambassadors, again, of the organization and not only there for the occasional board meeting. So the second line was come prepared for board meetings. And this is a challenge, again, to whomever is setting the agenda for meetings, that number one, there is an agenda. I highly recommend that. And then also that it's distributed in enough time ahead of time that the board members can all read over, understand what's coming up, whether there's other reports they need to be read up on, so that when you come to the meeting, everyone's prepared and ready to go right away to the meeting. It'll make meetings quicker, less drawn out, and less likely to be sidetracked that lead to the marathon board meetings that everyone hates the idea of. So if you come prepared and you have that stuff ahead of time, you can get to it and not have the person sitting down and for the first 10 minutes of the meeting strictly reading through their papers because they didn't prepare ahead of time. So again, we're trying to emphasize this again, think strategically is a very big one. Kind of the idea is this: as a board member, you're asking this question. You're asking, what's attributed to the successful outcome of our program or event that just happened? And how can we keep that being replicated? How can we do that again? What is the thing there that made it work? What it's not saying is, how much do we spend for the t-shirts? Now, again, you are responsible ultimately for the overall financial budget, But the nitpicky details is not important. What you're more concerned about is the time and expense we did for this event, is the outcomes actually happening? That's what we want to see. Are we getting across the message? Are we serving the people we need to serve? That's a much more strategic question than give me the idea how much soda, pop we spent or something. So speak up on legal or ethical concerns. This just happened in another board meeting I was at, where a proposal was made and was just kind of a discussion point, but there was 3 different members, one from a legal background, one from a accounting background, and myself, who has come from a nonprofit management background, that kind of raised their hands and said, whoa, hold on here. Nice idea, good touchy-feely moment, but we need to really look at this because there could be legal ramifications and organizational ramifications that we're not thinking of. And so we kind of tabled the issue because we need to dig into it more. And that's where you're speaking up on those concerns. We're going, we're not sure. We need to dig into this more. So that's a responsibility of a board member to stand up when the time calls for it and say, hold on, time out, let's slow down. I already talked about me serving as ambassadors. That one to work on as a board member is you've all heard about the elevator statement, where you can say within 15 to 30 seconds paraphrase what your mission is. So that's something to really work on as a board member. And everyone says, oh yeah, I can tell people what we do, but really have it practiced so that it comes off very naturally. And also think about a really huge help to your organization and your director is being willing to talk to, if you're involved in other civic clubs or organizations around town, being willing to share about what that organization that you're serving on, what they do. Making financial contributions once a year has more to do with the buy-in that the public sees, that all your board members believe so much in the mission that they're willing to give of their resources to it. It's not about necessarily kind of gauging how much each gives. It's the fact that to get 100% giving sends a really great message to the public. And of course, board members can help solicit new donors or members, or encourage people to come to fundraising events and stuff like that. So that's a very important, obviously, that's spheres of influence. Okay, so let's see here. One thing I want to talk about when it comes to good board members, you might hear in your boards like, oh, we have a problem with absenteeism, or my board just won't fundraise, or I've had the same board members for like 15 to 20 years. What can I do about this? What you're actually discussing right now and sharing is symptoms, not problems. So if that sounds like your board, if those are actually symptoms of other problems, which are probably not great policies and procedures, a lack of understanding what their roles have been, and then also maybe a term issue when it comes to how long someone can stay on a board. So if those are some of the issues you're struggling with, I'm glad you're listening, because that's the kind of things that GLCYD can help you with. All right, 3 hats of role clarity. You have a governance hat, which is, this is where the formal power of the board is. This is where the board is the ultimate legal and moral authority of the organization. So that's a big one. You act as a unit, not individuals. The implementation hat is where you're delegated a certain amount of authority for a limited purpose or time. So when you talk about your task force or committees, this is where the board member is given a little bit of authority over a certain topic or certain area, but it's limited. They don't have the same force and decision making as the actual board does in the governance function. And the third hat is a volunteer hat, which this one we often, especially in smaller nonprofits, wear a lot. You volunteer at events, you volunteer at a fundraiser, you volunteer this way, that way, whatever. So when out volunteering and giving of your hours and your time for your organization, remember, in those moments, you are still a board member of your said organization, but you have no individual authority. Your authority comes from the body and the entity of the board when meeting as the board with a quorum. Other than that, you have the title, but you don't have the authority. So remember that when you volunteer, don't try to throw your weight around at an event because you're a board member, because in that moment, you don't have much power. Go and find the director to make the big decisions during those things. I want to share with you this chart because this is really great. It's the division of responsibilities between a board and the director, CEO, president, whatever title your leader has. So the board is focusing on end results, whereas the director's focusing on the means. How are we going to get to those end results? The board's worried about the end results. They're asking the director, did we get here? And the director's saying, yes, we did. Here's what I did to get there. But the board's not always determining or making sure they're coming up with the ways to accomplish it. They're trusting their director to do it and find a way to do it. So they're looking at the what, why, how much, how well, whereas the director's looking at how, when, why, by whom. It's the details. The board's focusing on mission and goals, and the director is looking at how are we going to accomplish those? What kind of strategies and what kind of assignments do I need to give out to accomplish those goals? The board's power come in giving a vote. They vote on things, where the CEO or director recommends to the board so they can vote. The key point here is the bottom line of this slide: trust. If there's a lack of trust between the director and the board, the whole function crumbles. There has to be an underlying trust between leader and board to make a successful nonprofit. Tips, tricks, and ideas. Make sure you have effective orientations. Consider typing your mission at the top of all your agendas. A mission moment shared as an agenda item is when you can celebrate something that happened since the last board meeting that shows the work that the organization is doing that is accomplishing the mission. So it's a time to tell a story to really encourage people. You can evaluate your meetings. You can discuss this kind of training and its highlights and look for areas to continually improve the operation of your board. All right, some of the tools available from GLCYD, and many of these are available as free to members of GLCYD, but we offer, this is just a small list that specifically looks at boards, whether it's board meeting evaluation or self-evaluation, orientations, composition analysis, or recruiting grids, and of course strategic planning. We offer all those services and much more. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely follow up with us. And I know that was quick and fast, and I rattle out and I'm out of breath. So that was your half hour, but I want to thank you so much. I hope there was a lot of good information. You'll be able to check out the video when Victoria has it up, and she'll send you information. But if you want to learn more about us and what we do, we have a Facebook. You can look to our website, glcyd.org, or if you want to talk to me specifically, there's my email on the last slide. And we just thank you again for taking a half an hour. And I know it was only a tease. It wasn't meant to be in-depth and thorough, but hopefully you enjoyed it, got some information, and hope to look to work with you more in the future. Thank you.